Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was in Harry Potter. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. Part 1, The Feather and the Stone. The rain battered against the high, arched windows of the Charms classroom, a relentless gray drumming that matched the turmoil inside Izuku Midoriya's chest. The air smelled of old parchment, burning wax, and the faint, ozone-tinged scent of active magic. Wrist movement, everyone. Remember, swish and flick. Professor Flitwick's voice squeaked from atop his pile of books. And enunciate. The magic comes from the intent, but the conduit is the voice. Izuku gripped his wand, 10 inches, rowan wood, with a unicorn hair core that seemed to be sleeping on the job, so tightly his knuckles turned white. He stared at the white feather resting on the desk in front of him. It looked heavy. To Izuku, it looked as heavy as a mountain. Focus, he told himself. Visualize the magical core. It's there. It has to be there. He closed his eyes, searching for the warmth in his gut that the textbooks described. For most wizards, it was a roaring fire, a rushing river. For Katsuki Bakugo, sitting 3 rows ahead, it was a volcano waiting to erupt. But for Izuku, it was a candle flickering in a drafty room. Wingardium Leviosa, Izuku whispered. He performed the swish. He executed the flick. He poured every ounce of his will into the wood. The feather twitched. It gave a singular, pathetic shudder, dragged itself a millimeter to the left, and then stopped dead. A harsh, barking laugh cut through the concentration of the room. Look at him! Katsuki Bakugo didn't bother whispering. He leaned back in his chair, his Slytherin tie loose around his collar, his blonde hair spiking up as if charged with static. Oi Deku! Are you trying to levitate it or blow it away with your nose? The nickname, Deku, echoed. In Japanese, it meant a wooden puppet, useless and hollow. In the context of Hogwarts, Bakugo had coined it to mean the wizard equivalent of a squib, defective. Mr. Bakugo, please focus on your own work, Flitwick chided gently, though he looked at Izuku with a familiar, pitying expression that hurt worse than the mockery. I'm done, Professor, Bakugo scoffed. He lazily pointed his wand, dragon heartstring, rigid, aggressive, at his own feather. He didn't even speak the incantation aloud. With a sharp jerk of his wrist, the feather didn't just float. It shot upward with such velocity it stuck into the wooden rafters of the ceiling. Nonverbal casting already? Flitwick clapped his hands, delighted. 5 points to Slytherin. Excellent form, Mr. Bakugo. Izuku looked down at his desk. The shame was a hot, physical weight in his throat. He was a 5th year. He was 15 years old. His peers were learning to vanish objects and silence ravens. He was still struggling with a spell first years mastered in October. It's not fair, the treacherous voice in his head whispered. Men are not born equal. In this world, magic is everything. Beside him, Ochako Uraraka, a Hufflepuff with a permanently rosy complexion and calloused fingertips, leaned in. Don't listen to him, Deku, she whispered, using the name affectionately, trying to reclaim it. You almost had it that time. I saw it move. It dragged, Uraraka, Izuku muttered, putting his wand down. It felt like a dead stick. It didn't fly. It dragged. Well, maybe the feather is defective, she offered with a bright, forced smile, tapping her own wand against her chin. With a hum, she touched her own feather, and it floated gently, bobbing in the air as if gravity had simply forgotten it existed. It was her specialty, gravity manipulation spells. She was brilliant at them. Izuku sighed, pulling out a battered notebook titled Magical Theory Analysis, Volume 13. If he couldn't cast, he would understand. He would understand magic better than anyone else, even if he couldn't use it. He began to scribble notes on Bakugo's wrist movement. Sharp, aggressive arc likely channels emotion into the incantation to bypass somatic resistance. Bakugo's core is volatile, high output, low control, but his instinct compensates. Mr. Midoriya, Flitwick called out as the bell rang, signaling the end of the lesson. A word, if you please. The class shuffled out. Bakugo shoulder-checked Izuku as he passed. Get out of the way, squib, he hissed, his palms crackling with small, unauthorized sparks. You're wasting the air in this castle. Izuku kept his head down and approached the teacher's desk. Professor? Flitwick adjusted his glasses, looking at the boy with genuine sadness. Izuku, we have to discuss your OWLS. The practical exams are approaching. You have the highest written scores in the year, surpassing even Miss Yayorozu in Ravenclaw. But the practicals? I can do it, Izuku said quickly, desperation creeping into his voice. I just need a different focus. Maybe a different wand would. I read that Rowan is protective, maybe if I tried. It is not the wand, my boy, Flitwick said softly. Your magical core, it is incredibly small. It is not that you are a squib, you can see dementors, you can stir potions, but you lack the reservoir to project magic outward. I am worried. Defense against the dark arts, transfiguration. These require power you simply do not seem to possess. I'll work harder, Izuku said, his voice trembling. I'll study twice as much. You cannot study your way into raw power, Izuku, Flitwick said, his voice kind but crushing. Just be realistic. There are many jobs in the ministry for a boy with your mind. Archives. History of magic. Archives. A desk job. Watching from the sidelines while others fought the dark wizards, while others became heroes. Yes, Professor, Izuku lied. I'll be realistic. Part 2. The Legend and the Reality. The great hall was loud during lunch, filled with the clatter of golden plates, and the roar of hundreds of conversations. Izuku sat at the edge of the Gryffindor table, his notebook open, ignoring the pumpkin pasty on his plate. He's at it again, Tenya Ida said, sitting down opposite him with rigid, perfect posture. Ida was a Ravenclaw, but he spent most of his meals at the Gryffindor table, much to the annoyance of the teachers. Midoriya, you must eat. Brain function requires glucose. I'm analyzing the new data, teacher, Izuku mumbled, tapping his quill against the paper. Professor Yagi. No one knows where he came from. The Daily Prophet says he's an American transfer, but his accent is distinctively Japanese-British. I heard he was an Auror, Uraraka said, sliding onto the bench next to Izuku. Like, a really high-ranking one. There are rumors, Ida lowered his voice, that he knows All Might. Izuku froze. All Might. Tashinori Yagi, known to the world as All Might, was the supreme mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, and the most powerful Auror in history. He was the symbol of peace. He had defeated the Dark Wizard all for one in a duel that had shattered the Alps. He was the reason Izuku wanted to be a wizard. He was the reason Izuku hadn't snapped his wand in half and gone back to the Muggle world. All Might hasn't been seen in public for 5 years, Izuku whispered. Not since the Battle of Kamino. Well, we're about to find out, Uraraka pointed to the high table. Look, the headmaster, a small, rodent-like man named Nizu, stood up on his chair. Attention! Before we resume our afternoon classes, I have a few announcements. First, the Forbidden Forest is, as the name suggests, forbidden. Especially to Mr. Kaminari and Mr. Kirishima, who seem to think the Acromantulas want to play fetch. A ripple of laughter went through the hall. Secondly, Nizu continued, his black eyes glittering, we are pleased to welcome our new defense against the dark arts teacher. Please welcome Professor Tashinori Yagi. The doors to the great hall didn't open. Instead, a side door near the staff table creaked, and a man stepped out. The hall went silent. They expected a hero. They expected broad shoulders, shining armor, or at least a dashing cloak. What they got was a scarecrow. Professor Yagi was impossibly tall and gaunt, his robes hanging off his skeletal frame like curtains on a wire. His hair was a messy mop of blonde, 2 strands sticking up like rabbit ears. His eyes were sunken in deep shadow, glowing with a piercing, electric blue light. He coughed into a handkerchief, and when he pulled it away, Izuku swore he saw a speck of red. He looks. Bakugo sneered from the Slytherin table, loud enough for half the room to hear. Like a corpse. He looks sick, Uraraka whispered. Izuku stared. He didn't see a corpse. He saw the way the man walked. Despite the limp, despite the hunch, there was a gravity to him. A presence. Professor Yagi raised a hand, his smile wide and unnervingly toothy. I look forward to teaching you all how to not die, he rasped. His voice was deep, booming, utterly at odds with his frail body. Izuku felt a shiver race down his spine. He opened a fresh page in his notebook. Professor Yagi. Potential relation to All Might, unknown. Magic signature, suppressed? Injury? Note, check archives for Oris injured 5 years ago. Part 3, the practical lesson. The Dadak classroom had been cleared of desks. The stone floor was bare, save for a long dueling platform raised in the center. Books away, Yagi said. He was leaning against a pillar, looking as if standing required immense effort. Theory is useless if you freeze when a curse is flying at your face. Today we duel. The class erupted in whispers. Fifth years usually didn't do live combat until the second term. Slytherin and Gryffindor, Yagi called out, his eyes scanning the roster. A classic rivalry. Let's see. Mr. Bakugo. Bakugo vaulted onto the platform before his name was fully spoken. He cracked his knuckles, grinning wolfishly. Finally. Who's the victim? Yagi's blue eyes scanned the crowd. They landed on Izuku. Izuku shrank back. Please no. Don't call me. Don't make me go up there. Young Midoriya, Yagi said. The room went deadly quiet. Sir, Hermione Granger, a Gryffindor prefect, raised her hand tentatively. Midoriya, he struggles with practical casting. Perhaps this isn't. A dark wizard will not care if you struggle, Yagi cut her off, though his tone was not unkind. It was simply factual. If young Midoriya wishes to be a wizard, he must learn to survive. Up you go. Izuku climbed the steps to the platform. His legs felt like jelly. He drew his wand. It felt like a twig. Bakugo stood opposite him, 20 paces away. He didn't even raise his wand into a dueling stance. He just let it hang by his side, sparks dripping from the tip like molten gold. I'm going to hurt you, Deku, Bakugo said softly. I'm going to hurt you so bad you'll leave the school and never come back. Bow, Yagi commanded. They bowed. Begin, Confrey. Bakugo didn't finish the incantation. He didn't need to. A blast of orange light erupted from his wand, a blasting curse aimed directly at Izuku's chest. Izuku didn't try to block. He couldn't block. Protego required a shield of magical density he didn't possess. Instead, Izuku dropped. He threw himself flat on the stone, the curse screaming over his head, singing his hair. The heat was intense. The spell hit the stone wall behind him, blowing a crater into the masonry. Dust rained down. Running away? Bakugo yelled, firing again. Reducto! Izuku scrambled to the left, rolling over his shoulder. He analyzed the pattern. Bakugo favors his right side. He telegraphs with his shoulder. The spell travel time is 0.4 seconds. Izuku wasn't casting. He was dodging. He was scrambling like a rat, diving behind pillars, sliding under curses that would have shattered his bones. Fight back! Bakugo roared, frustration mounting. He unleashed a barrage of stinging hexes. Izuku was cornered. He was at the edge of the platform. Bakugo raised his wand for a finisher. Think. I have no magic. What do I have? Izuku's hand went to his pocket. A dung bomb he'd confiscated from a second year earlier. Eat this, Deku! As Bakugo shouted, Izuku didn't use his wand. He threw the dung bomb. Not at Bakugo, but at the floor directly in front of Bakugo's feet. Bang! A cloud of acrid brown smoke exploded upward. Bakugo faltered, coughing, his eyes watering. What the? In that second of distraction, Izuku lunged. He tackled Bakugo. It was a Muggle move. A brawl. They hit the floor, Bakugo's wand skittering away. Get off me! Bakugo screamed, his hands popping with small, uncontrolled explosions against Izuku's ribs. Stop! Yagi's voice boomed. An invisible force pulled them apart. Izuku was lifted into the air and set gently down on the far side of the room. Bakugo was shoved back, panting, furious, humiliated. That was not a duel, Bakugo spat. He didn't use magic. He cheated. He survived, Yagi said quietly. The room fell silent again. Yagi walked over to Izuku, who was clutching his bruised ribs. Mr. Bakugo, Yagi said, looking at the blonde. You have immense power. But you telegraph your moves. You are arrogant. You assumed your opponent would play by your rules. If this were a real fight, Mr. Midoriya's, unconventional tactic might have given him time to escape. He turned to Izuku. Yagi's eyes were unreadable. Deep. Searching. However, Yagi continued, his voice dropping an octave. You cannot rely on tricks forever, young Midoriya. Tricks run out. Magic does not. He dismissed the class. As the students filed out, whispering about the fight, Izuku lingered, packing his bags slowly. He felt the sting of tears. He had survived, yes. But he hadn't been a wizard. He had been a brawler. A distraction. Young Midoriya, Yagi called out from his desk. Stay a moment. Part 4. The Monster in the Dungeons. The meeting with Yagi had been brief and confusing. The professor had simply asked about his family, his history, and why he wanted to be a wizard. Izuku had given the standard answer, to save people. Yagi had looked at him with that same melancholic expression and sent him away to dinner. Now, hours later, Izuku was walking the corridors alone. He had skipped dinner to study in the library, trying to find a countercurse for the bruising on his side. The castle was quiet. Too quiet. As he passed the entrance to the dungeons, the territory of Slytherin House, he smelled it. A scent like old socks and rotting meat. And then, a scream. High-pitched. Terrified. Izuku didn't think. He didn't weigh the pros and cons. His legs moved on their own. He sprinted down the stone stairs, his sneakers squeaking on the damp floor. Help! Someone! He rounded the corner and skidded to a halt. Standing in the middle of the corridor was a troll. It was 12 feet tall, its skin like gray granite, holding a wooden club the size of a grown man. It was smashing the club against the wall, confused, angry. Trapped in the dead end behind it was a small first-year student. A Slytherin boy with a black cap. Kota Izumi. Get back! Kota yelled, waving his wand uselessly. Sparks fizzled out. He was paralyzed with fear. The troll roared, raising the club. It was going to crush him. The teachers were too far away. The prefects were in the great hall. There was only Izuku. Hey! Izuku screamed. The troll turned its lumbering head. Izuku drew his wand. Do something. Anything. Flipendo! He shouted. A puff of white smoke came out of his wand. It hit the troll's knee. It didn't even knock the creature back. It just annoyed it. The troll grunted and turned back to Kota, raising the club higher. Magic won't work. I am powerless. No, I am not powerless. Izuku scanned the hallway. Torches on the walls? A suit of armor standing guard. Izuku sprinted. He ran straight at the troll. Run, Kota! Izuku yelled. He didn't cast the spell. He grabbed the spear from the suit of armor's hand. It was heavy, rusted. Using his momentum, Izuku jammed the blunt end of the spear into the soft flesh between the troll's toes. The troll bellowed in pain, stumbling backward. The club swung wild, smashing into the ceiling, raining stone dust down on them. Move! Izuku grabbed Kota by the robes and threw him toward the exit. The troll recovered instantly. It was stupid, but it was fast. It swung a massive fist. Izuku tried to dodge, but he wasn't fast enough. The backhand struck him. It felt like being hit by a car. Izuku flew across the corridor, smashing into the stone wall. His vision went white. His wand clattered away into the darkness. He slid to the floor, gasping for air, tasting copper. His ribs, the ones Bakugo had bruised, screamed in agony. The troll loomed over him. It raised the club. This was it. This was how Izuku Midoriya died. Not as a hero. Just as a smear on the dungeon floor. I'm sorry, Mom. I tried. The club came down. Detroit. The voice shook the very foundations of the castle. Smash! A blast of wind, concentrated and terrifyingly powerful, erupted from the end of the hallway. It hit the troll with the force of a freight train. The 12-foot monster didn't just fall, it was launched. It flew backward, feet leaving the ground, and embedded itself into the stone wall 20 feet away with a sickening crunch. It slumped forward unconscious. Silence. Izuku forced his eyes open. The dust settled. Standing at the end of the hall, his hands still extended, was Professor Yagi. But he looked different. For a second, just a fraction of a second, Izuku didn't see the skeleton. He saw a titan. He saw a man with muscles like steel cables, a smile that defied fear. Then, steam poured off the professor's body. He coughed, a wet, hacking sound, and slumped against the wall, returning to his gaunt form. Professor? Izuku wheezed, trying to sit up. Yagi stumbled over to him, falling to his knees. Young Midoriya. Are you alive? I think so. Izuku looked at the unconscious troll, then at Koda, who was shivering in the corner. Is he okay? Yagi looked at Izuku. He looked at the boy who had no magic, no power, who had charged a mountain troll with a rusty spear to save a child from a rival house. He is fine, Yagi said softly. Because you were here, teachers began to arrive. Snape, McGonagall, Flitwick. There was shouting. Points were awarded and deducted. Koda was taken to the hospital wing, but Yagi stayed with Izuku. He helped the boy up, his skeletal hand gripping Izuku's shoulder with surprising strength. Come with me, Yagi whispered. We need to talk. Part 5. The Truth of the Sacred Flame. Professor Yagi's office was a mess of papers and half-packed boxes. He sat Izuku down on a chair and handed him a chocolate frog. Eat, Yagi commanded. It helps with the shock. Izuku took a bite, feeling the warmth spread through his cold limbs. Professor, that spell you used. The wind charm. I've never seen a Ventus that powerful. It felt like all might. Yagi froze. He sighed, a sound like air escaping a tire. He reached up and touched his chest. Young Midoriya. You are a fanatic about magical theory, are you not? Yes, sir. Then tell me. What defines a wizard's power? Their core, Izuku recited automatically. The biological reservoir of magic located near the solar plexus. It grows with age and stabilizes at 17. One cannot increase their core size significantly after birth, correct? Yagi said. He stood up, walking to the window, looking out at the forbidden forest. That is the standard truth. But it is not the only truth. Yagi turned around. He lifted his shirt. Izuku gasped. On the left side of Yagi's chest was a scar. It looked like a starburst, a hideous purple crater where flesh and magic had been twisted together. 5 years ago, Yagi said, I fought a dark wizard who could steal magical cores. He could take magic from others and give it to his followers. His name was All for One. The boogeyman, Izuku whispered. I thought he was a myth. He is very real, Yagi said grimly. I defeated him. But he destroyed my core. I have no natural magic left, Izuku. I am running on fumes. The spell I cast in the dungeon, that took weeks off my life. But you're the symbol of peace. If you lose your magic, the world will lose its symbol, Yagi finished. Darkness creates a vacuum. If people know I am weak, the dark wizards will rise again. That is why I am at Hogwarts. I am looking for a successor. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. A successor? There is a legend, Yagi said, stepping closer. Of a magic that is not born, but passed down. A torch passed from one runner to the next. It is not a genetic trait. It is a stockpile of power. One wizard cultivates it, makes it stronger, and passes it to the next. One for all, Izuku breathed. He had read about it in an ancient text, dismissed as a fairy tale. Yes, Yagi said. He looked down at Izuku. I have watched you, Midoriya. I watched you in class. You have no power, yet you study harder than anyone. I watched you duel young Bakugo. You were frightened, but you did not yield. And tonight, Yagi knelt, bringing his face level with Izuku's. The blue light in his eyes burned intensely. Tonight, while fully trained wizards froze in fear, you ran toward the danger. You, who had the most to lose and the least to gain. You moved before you could think. Tears began to gather in Izuku's eyes. He had heard the opposite his whole life. You are weak. You are useless. You are in the way. Most top heroes show signs of greatness from an early age, Yagi said softly. But many of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before their minds could catch up. The tears spilled over, hot and fast. Izuku clutched his chest, sobbing. I have been looking for someone to take this power, Yagi said. Someone with the heart of a hero, but who lacks the means to show it. I believe I have found him. Yagi extended a hand. Izuku Midoriya. You can become a hero. The words hit Izuku harder than the troll. He crumpled forward, burying his face in his hands, weeping uncontrollably. It was the permission he had waited 15 years to hear. But be warned, Yagi said, his voice turning serious. This power. One for all, it is heavy. If you accept it, your body must be ready. If I gave it to you now, the moment you cast the spell, your limbs would explode. Izuku looked up, wiping his eyes, a fierce determination replacing the sorrow. I'll do it. Whatever it takes, Yagi smiled. It wasn't the fake, toothy smile of all might. It was a genuine, tired smile of a man who had finally found hope. Good, Yagi said. Meet me at the Quidditch pitch tomorrow at dawn. We are going to build your vessel. No magic. Just sweat. Yes, sir. And Izuku? Yes? You need a new wand. Part 6. The Dawn of the Wizard. The next morning, the sun had barely crested the Black Lake. The mist was thick on the grounds. Izuku stood in the center of the pitch. He was wearing a Muggle tracksuit. He was tired, his ribs ached, and he was terrified. But as he looked at the castle, looming high and ancient above him, he felt something new. For the first time in his life, the fire in his gut wasn't a flickering candle. It was a spark. A spark waiting for gasoline. Bakugo's words echoed in his mind. I'm going to hurt you so bad you'll leave. Izuku tightened his fists. I'm not leaving, Kaken, he thought. I'm just getting started. Yagi appeared out of the mist, dragging a heavy iron sled behind him. This, Yagi said, pointing to the sled, is American-style training. You are going to pull this around the lake. Without magic. The whole lake? Izuku asked, eyeing the massive circumference. Before breakfast, Yagi added. Move it, hero. Izuku grabbed the ropes. He pulled. It was heavy. It was agonizing, but the wheels turned. Izuku Midoriya began to run. And for the first time, he wasn't running away. Part 1. The Ghost of the Library. The rumor mill at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry moved faster than a firebolt. By breakfast the morning after the incident in the dungeons, the story of Izuku Midoriya and the Mountain Troll had mutated into at least 12 different versions. In the Hufflepuff version, Izuku had cast a complex banishing charm that accidentally ricocheted. In the Ravenclaw version, Professor Yagi had done all the work while Izuku merely fainted in a convenient location. In the Slytherin version, loudly perpetuated by Draco Malfoy and his cohorts, the troll had simply slipped on a puddle of drool, and Potter's pet squib had tried to take credit. But at the Gryffindor table, the mood was subdued. Izuku sat nursing a bowl of porridge, his left side heavily bandaged under his robes. Every breath was a reminder of the troll's backhand, a dull, throbbing ache that Madame Pomfrey's Skillgrow and Bruise Begone Paste were fighting to mend. You're mad, Ron Weasley said, shaking his head as he buttered a piece of toast. Absolutely mental, mate. Running at a troll with a rusty spear? You're lucky you aren't paste. I didn't think, Izuku mumbled, staring into his oats. Koda was there. It was brave, Ochako Uraraka said firmly. She sat next to him, breaking a scone in half. Reckless, sure. But brave. Even the fat lady in the portrait was talking about it. Across the table, Harry Potter looked up from his copy of the Daily Prophet. His eyes met Izuku's. There was a strange look in them, recognition perhaps. Harry knew what it was like to jump into the fray when everyone else was screaming. He gave Izuku a small, solemn nod before returning to the news, which was growing darker by the day. Ignore the gossip, Tenya Ida commanded, chopping the air with his hand. The important thing is that you survived and Mr. Izumi is safe. However, Midoriya, I must express my concern regarding your academic schedule. You were in the library until curfew again last night. I have to catch up, Izuku said quickly. My practicals. Izuku, Hermione Granger interjected gently, closing her Transfiguration book. You know the theory better than the NEWT students. It's not a matter of knowledge. She trailed off, not wanting to say biological limitation. Izuku gripped his spoon. They didn't know. They couldn't know. In his pocket, burning a hole through the fabric of his robes, was a folded piece of parchment given to him by Professor Yagi. Training plan Phase 1. Location: the Olary. Time: 5 o'clock. I'll be fine, Izuku said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I just need to find the right method. I think I'm close. A shadow fell over the table. The chatter died down instantly. Katsuki Bakugo stood behind Izuku. He didn't look angry, which was terrifying. He looked calm. His tie was perfectly knotted, his robes pristine, but his red eyes were focused entirely on the back of Izuku's head. Deku, Bakugo said. Izuku froze. Keikaken, they say you took down a troll. I distracted it. Professor Yagi did the rest. Bakugo leaned down, his voice a whisper that only Izuku could hear. Don't think a fluke makes you a wizard. You're still a pebble on the side of the road. If you get in my way during the OWLS, I'll blast you into the Black Lake. He straightened up and walked away, his cloak billowing. Izuku exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. He touched his pocket again. A pebble, he thought. Maybe. But even a pebble can start a landslide. Part 2, The Theory of the Vessel. Professor Yagi's office was unlike any other teacher's at Hogwarts. While Snape's office was a dungeon of pickled horrors and Trelawney's was a suffocating attic of incense, Yagi's office was stark, filled only with stacks of American magical law books and half-packed crates. The only decoration was a large, moving poster on the wall of All Might in his prime, holding up a collapsing bridge in San Francisco with one hand while casting Protego Maxima with the other. Come in, young Midoriya, Yagi rasped. He was sitting behind his desk, looking even more skeletal than usual. A small trickle of blood ran from the corner of his mouth, which he hurriedly wiped away with a handkerchief. Professor, are you all right? Izuku asked, closing the door. Fine. Just the price of doing business, Yagi waved it off. Now. Sit. We have much to discuss before we begin your physical conditioning. Izuku sat, pulling out a fresh notebook. One for all analysis. You understand the concept of a magical core, correct? Yagi asked. Yes, Izuku recited. It is the metaphysical organ located near the solar plexus that processes ambient mana into personal magic. The size of the core determines the volume of magic a wizard can output at once. The density determines the potency. Textbook, Yagi nodded. Now, imagine your core as a cup. He picked up a chipped teacup from his desk. Most wizards are born with a cup. Some, like young Bakugo or Mr. Potter, have buckets. Some, like Albus Dumbledore, have barrels. Yagi looked at Izuku sadly. You, my boy, were born with a thimble. Izuku winced. He knew it, but hearing it out loud still stung. It is not a defect, Yagi continued. It is simply genetics. Fate. However, one for all is not a liquid to be poured into your cup. If I tried to pour my power into your thimble, what would happen? It would overflow, Izuku said. It would shatter, Yagi corrected grimly. He squeezed the teacup. Porcelain crunched. Shards fell onto the desk. Your core would rupture. You would die instantly. Izuku swallowed hard, staring at the broken pottery. One for all, Yagi explained, is not just magic. It is a living grimoire. It is the stockpiled power, experience, and will of 8 previous wizards. It is a separate entity. When you inherit it, you are not filling your cup. You are swallowing a star. Yagi stood up and walked around the desk. Since your magical core cannot contain it, your body must become the vessel. Your veins, your muscles, your bones, they must act as the conduit for this power. You must become a living wand. Izuku looked at his hands. They were scarred from years of trying to force magic that wasn't there, from quill calluses, from the troll. That is why you cannot cast it yet, Yagi said. If you channeled one for all through that rowan twig you call a wand right now, the backlash would blow your arm off at the shoulder. The magic is too dense, too volatile, so. I have to get stronger, Izuku said. You have to get tough, Yagi corrected. We have 10 months until the OWLS. But we don't have 10 months for the transfer. The darkness is rising, Izuku. The League of Villains, this new group under Shigaraki, is moving. I need to transfer the power to you within 3 months. Before the snow melts. Yagi pulled out a piece of parchment. It was a map of the Hogwarts grounds. This is the American Dream Plan, adapted for the Scottish Highlands, Yagi announced, striking a pose that looked ridiculous on his emaciated frame. You will clean. You will carry. You will run. And you will do it all without a single drop of magic. Clean? Izuku blinked. The house elves do a wonderful job, Yagi said, but the castle is vast. There are places even they neglect. The accumulation of magical residue in the trophy room. The guano in the oli, the shifting stones of the boathouse. Yagi pointed a long, bony finger at Izuku. You want to be a hero, Izuku? Then you must start by being a janitor. Part 3. The Filth and the Fury. The next 3 months were a blur of exhaustion, stench, and relentless labor. Izuku Midoriya ceased to be a student who happened to be bad at magic. He became a ghost that haunted the castle grounds at ungodly hours. Month 1. The Oli. The Hogwarts Oli was a stone tower located at the top of the West Tower. It housed hundreds of owls. It was cold, drafty, and the floor was coated in a century's worth of droppings, mouse skeletons, and molted feathers. Put your back into it, Yagi shouted. Izuku was scraping. He was using a muggle shovel and a stiff bristled brush. The smell was ammonia sharp, stinging his eyes. Why? Izuku grunted, heaving a pile of icy slush and guano into a bucket. Can't we use Scourgify? Because Scourgify uses mana. Yagi yelled from the doorway, where he was timing Izuku with a stopwatch. We are building physical density. Your muscles must be able to withstand the recoil of high-impact spellcasting. Every shovel is a step toward greatness. An eagle owl swooped down and nipped Izuku's ear. Ouch! Dodge! Yagi barked. Constant vigilance. Even the owls are your opponents. Izuku slipped on a slick patch of stone, crashing into the wall. He groaned, his muscles screaming. He had been doing this for 3 weeks. His hands were blistered raw. His robes always smelled faintly of bird, but as he pulled himself up, he noticed something. The heavy bucket of waste, which had taken 2 hands to lift on day 1, he now lifted with 1 hand. Month 2, the trophy room. Argus Filch, the caretaker, was a man who hated students with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. But for the first time in history, he seemed confused. You missed the spot, Filch sneered, pointing a gnarled finger at a silver shield from 1954. Izuku didn't complain. He was on his knees, polishing the silver with a rag and a tin of muggle polish Yagi had imported. Sorry, Mr. Filch, Izuku said, rubbing the metal in concentric circles. Wax on, wax off. Why are you doing this, boy? Filch asked, eyeing him suspiciously. Mrs. Norris, his skeletal cat, wound around his ankles. Detention? Extra credit, Izuku lied, sweat dripping from his nose. Humph. Students these days usually just wave their sticks and make sparks. No respect for the craft of maintenance. Filch scoffed, but he didn't kick Izuku out. Izuku polished until his shoulders felt like they were on fire. He polished the Quidditch cups. He polished the special services to the school medals, including Tom Riddle's, which gave him a weird, cold feeling. While he polished, he muttered spell theory. Incendio requires a sharp jab. Aguamenti is a flowing wave. The somatic component mirrors the elemental state. Fire is aggressive. Water is fluid. Earth is rigid. He moved his rag in the shape of the wand movements. Thousands of repetitions. His arm became a machine. Month 3, the beach. The Great Lake was freezing in November. The beach was a stretch of muddy, rocky shoreline near the giant squid's favorite sunning spot. Izuku was dragging a massive iron cauldron filled with rocks through the mud. A rope was tied around his waist. Pull! Yagi screamed. He was sitting on top of the cauldron in his muscle form, for about 3 seconds, before poofing back into a skeleton to reduce the weight. Actually, never mind, I'll walk. Izuku gritted his teeth. His legs burned. His lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. I can't do it. It's too heavy. He looked up at the castle. He saw the students in the courtyard. He saw Bakugo laughing at something, shooting sparks into the air. He saw Uraraka floating a pile of books. They are moving forward. I am stuck in the mud. No. Izuku dug his heels in. He visualized the flame. The sacred flame. I am here, he roared. With a heave that strained every tendon in his body, he dragged the cauldron 10 feet. Then another 10. Yagi watched from the sidelines, a strange expression on his face. He looked at Izuku's back, broadening, the robes fitting tighter around the shoulders. The boy was no longer scrawny. He was wiry. Condensed, like a coiled spring. He's ready, Yagi whispered to the wind. Part 4. The Hair of the Hero. The forbidden forest was silent, save for the crunch of frost beneath their boots. The moon was full, casting long, skeletal shadows through the ancient trees. This is deep enough, Yagi said, stopping in a small clearing. The air was thick with ancient magic here. The centaurs didn't come to this part of the woods. Izuku stood before him, shivering slightly, not from cold, but from adrenaline. He had done it. He had cleaned the entire coastline of the lake. He had polished every trophy. He had scrubbed the oli until it sparkled. He felt different. He felt solid. You have exceeded my expectations, Izuku, Yagi said, his voice solemn. Your vessel is prepared. It is not perfect, that will take years. But it is strong enough to hold the ember. Yagi reached up and plucked a long, blonde hair from his head. The method of transfer, Yagi said, holding the hair up to the moonlight. It requires the voluntary giving of DNA. The magic is carried in the biological material. Izuku nodded, his eyes wide. He expected a grand ritual. A circle of runes. A blood pact. A chanting of ancient Latin. Yagi thrust the hair in Izuku's face. Eat this. Izuku blinked. The wind whistled through the trees. Excuse me? Eat it, Yagi repeated. To inherit the power, you must ingest my DNA. Hair is the most efficient method. Unless you prefer a toenail? No. No, hair is fine. Izuku stammered. He took the hair. It was long and wiry. Do I just dry? Chew thoroughly, Yagi advised. Izuku looked at the hair. He looked at Yagi. He looked at the moon. This is for the power to save the world. This is for the power to be a hero. He scrunched up his face, shoved the hair into his mouth, and swallowed. It stuck in his throat for a second, triggering his gag reflex, before sliding down. Gross, Izuku whispered. And now, Yagi said, checking his pocket watch, we wait. It takes a few hours for the digestive system to process the genetic material and for the magic to fuse with your core. Will I feel it? Oh yes, Yagi said, his eyes darkening. You will feel it. Go to bed, Izuku. Tomorrow is a new day. And tomorrow, your life changes. Part 5. The Silent Spark. Izuku didn't sleep. He lay in his four-poster bed in the Gryffindor Tower, staring at the canopy. He waited for the fire. He waited for the surge of power. He felt nothing, just a slight stomach ache from the hair. Maybe it didn't work, he thought, panic rising in his chest at 3 a.m. Maybe I'm truly a squib. Maybe I don't even have a core for the magic to latch onto. He grabbed his wand from the nightstand. The Rowan wood felt the same. Cold. Lifeless. He tried to sleep, his dreams filled with laughing trolls and falling feathers. Morning came with a gray, oppressive sky. Izuku dragged himself to breakfast. He felt heavy. Not the heaviness of exhaustion, but a strange, internal density. Like his bones had been replaced with lead. You look terrible, Deku, Uraraka said, passing him a plate of eggs. Did you stay up all night again? Something like that, Izuku muttered. He reached for a goblet of pumpkin juice. Crack. The goblet didn't just tip over. The stem snapped in his fingers. Glass shattered. Juice spilled everywhere. Whoa! Ron jumped back. Create your own strength potion, did you? Izuku stared at his hand. He hadn't squeezed that hard. He had barely touched it. He looked at his palm. Under the skin, for just a microsecond, he thought he saw a web of red, glowing veins. Sorry, Izuku stammered, cleaning up the mess with a napkin because he was too afraid to use his wand. I'm just jittery. Well, calm down, Hermione said, looking at him with concern. We have charms first thing. Flitwick is testing us on the Lumos Solum variant. It requires precision. Precision. Izuku looked at his trembling hands. He felt like he was holding a hurricane inside a glass bottle. Part 6. The Light That Blinds. The charms classroom was dimly lit to facilitate the spell work. The students were lined up in rows. Excellent, Miss Granger. Flitwick squeaked. Hermione's wand tip was glowing with a pure, sun-like radiance that illuminated the dark corners of the room without being harsh. 10 points to Gryffindor. Next, Flitwick called. Mr. Bakugo. Bakugo stepped up. He didn't look at the target. He looked at Izuku. Lumos solum, Bakugo muttered. A beam of light, focused and intense like a laser, shot from his wand. It hit the target dummy, singeing the fabric. A bit aggressive but effective, Flitwick noted. Control your output, Mr. Bakugo. You aren't trying to interrogate the dummy. Bakugo smirked and walked back to his desk, bumping Izuku's shoulder. Your turn, defective. Try not to wet yourself. Izuku stepped up to the podium. The room went quiet. Everyone knew Izuku's track record. Usually, nothing happened. Sometimes, a few sparks. Once, his wand had emitted a puff of black smoke that smelled like burned rubber. Izuku took a deep breath. He felt it. It wasn't a candle anymore. Deep in his gut, something was uncoiling. It felt ancient. It felt angry. It was a roaring, thundering ocean of power that rushed through his veins, hot and electric. Control it, Yagi had said. Clench your buttocks and yell smash inside your heart. Well, maybe not exactly that, but close enough. Izuku gripped his wand. The wood seemed to vibrate. He could feel the unicorn hair core waking up. No, not waking up. Screaming. The core was panicking. Mr. Midoriya? Flitwick asked gently. Whenever you are ready. Izuku closed his eyes. He visualized the spell. Lumos. Light. Just a little light. He tried to draw out 1% of the power, but the tap was rusted. It didn't drip. It broke. The power of 1 for all surged into his right arm. The sleeve of his robe tightened as the muscles beneath expanded, glowing with red, lightning like fissures. Lumos. Izuku shouted. He didn't mean to shout. The magic forced the air from his lungs. There was a sound like a thunderclap inside the room. The tip of his wand didn't just glow. It detonated. A sphere of blinding, white light expanded outward at the speed of sound. It wasn't just light. It was solid force. My eyes. Someone screamed, probably Draco. The windows of the classroom, all 12 of them, shattered outward instantly. The glass rained down into the courtyard below. The desks were shoved backward by the shockwave. Flitwick was blown off his pile of books, tumbling through the air like a leaf. The light was so intense it bleached the color from the world for a solid 3 seconds. Then, darkness returned. Smoke drifted from the tip of Izuku's wand. The classroom was a wreck. Papers fluttered in the wind blowing through the broken windows. Students were coughing, rubbing their eyes, peeking out from under their desks. Izuku stood frozen. His wand was smoking. It had a hairline fracture running down the handle. His right arm felt broken. It hung limply at his side, purple and bruised, his fingers twisted at an unnatural angle. The pain hit him a second later, a white-hot agony that made his vision blur. Mr. Midoriya? Flitwick's voice came from behind a tipped-over cabinet. Izuku swayed. He looked at Bakugo. Bakugo was standing frozen, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open. He was staring at Izuku. For the first time, there was no mockery in his face. Only shock. Pure, unadulterated shock. Izuku whispered, the room spinning. I think I did it. Then his eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed to the stone floor. Part 7. The Diagnosis. When Izuku woke up, the familiar white ceiling of the hospital wing greeted him. He's awake! Uraraka's voice. Quiet, Miss Uraraka, Madame Pomfrey scolded. He needs rest. I've never seen magical exhaustion like this combined with such severe physical trauma. Izuku turned his head. His right arm was encased in a thick cast, suspended in a sling. Sitting by his bed were Uraraka, Ida, and, surprisingly, Professor Yagi. What happened? Izuku croaked. You blew up the classroom, mate, Ron Weasley whispered from the next bed over. He was in for a Quidditch injury. It was wicked. Terrifying, but wicked. Everyone is okay? Izuku asked, panic rising. Everyone is fine, Yagi said, stepping forward. His face was grave. A few temporary blinding cases, but Madame Pomfrey sorted them out. The windows, however, will need to be replaced. I couldn't control it, Izuku whispered. It was too much. I warned you, Yagi said quietly, so the others couldn't hear. You tried to channel 100% through a vessel that can only handle 5%. You are lucky you only broke your arm and not your neck. Madame Pomfrey bustled over with a potion. Drink this, Mr. Midoriya? Skeelgrow. It will be a painful night. As the students were ushered out, Yagi stayed behind for a moment. You have the power now, Izuku, Yagi said. The world saw it. Bakugo saw it. The secret of your squib status is gone. Now they will ask questions. What do I tell them? Tell them your magic finally woke up, Yagi said with a faint smile. It's rare, but it happens. Late bloomers. He patted Izuku's uninjured shoulder. Rest now. Because once that arm heals, we have to figure out how to keep you from blowing up the rest of the school. Yagi left. Izuku lay back against the pillows. His arm throbbed with a rhythmic, sickening pain. But as he looked at the ceiling, he smiled. He had magic. It was wild, dangerous, and self-destructive. But it was his. He closed his eyes and drifted off, dreaming not of falling feathers, but of a green lightning that could tear the sky apart. Part 1. The Frequent Flyer. The sun was high and bright over the Scottish Highlands, casting a deceptive warmth over the stone towers of Hogwarts. Inside the hospital wing, however, the temperature was distinctly frosty. Mr. Midoriya, Madame Pomfrey said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. This is the 4th time this week. Izuku Midoriya sat on the edge of the bed, cradling his left wrist. It was swollen, turning a nasty shade of violet. It was just a transfiguration accident, ma'am. I was trying to turn a beetle into a button, and instead, you turned your metacarpal into dust, Pomfrey snapped, uncorking a bottle of Skeelgrow with a violent pop. I have treated dragonpox, splinching, and curse boils, but I have never seen a student whose magic seems personally offended by his own skeleton. She shoved the goblet into his good hand. Drink. Every drop. Izuku grimaced as the potion went down. It tasted like burnt rubber and old socks. Almost immediately, his wrists began to smoke, the bones knitting themselves back together with sharp, stinging jabs. I don't understand it, Pomfrey muttered, bustling away to check on a second year with a swollen tongue. It's as if you're trying to channel a giant's strength through a goblin's wand. If you continue this way, you won't have any bones left to break by Christmas. Izuku sighed, leaning back against the pillows. He looked at the bedside table. There lay his wand, or what was left of it. It was his second wand this month. A fissure ran down the length of the cherry wood, held together by spellotape. One for all is too much, he thought bitterly. Yagi said I had to be a vessel? But I feel like a bomb. Every time he cast a spell, it was all or nothing. If he tried Wingardium Leviosa, he slammed the object into the ceiling. If he tried Incendio, he scorched his eyebrows. The power was there, oceans of it, but the faucet was broken. He could only open the floodgates. The door to the hospital wing creaked open. Tenya Ida marched in, followed by a frantic-looking Hermione Granger and a worried Ochako Uraraka. Midoriya! Ida announced, chopping the air with his hand. We heard the explosion from the History of Magic classroom. Are you functional? I'm fine, Ida, Izuku said, hiding his taped-up wand. Just, recoil. Recoil? Hermione sat down on the chair, dropping a heavy stack of books on the floor. Thud. Izuku, wizards don't get recoil. Magic flows through us. It shouldn't hurt you. Unless, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, unless you're doing it wrong. Doing it wrong? Izuku blinked. I'm saying the incantations perfectly. I'm doing the wrist movements exactly like the diagrams. That's the problem. Hermione opened the top book, Magical Theory in the Old World. You're treating magic like a formula. Input A plus gesture B equals spell C. But your magic, it's different. It's dense. It's heavy. Like a physical weight, Uraraka added, nodding. When you cast, the air gets heavy around you. It feels like gravity increases. Exactly, Hermione said. You're trying to force a gallon of water through a needle. The pressure builds up behind the blockage, your wand, your arm, and boom. Izuku looked at his hand. So what do I do? Stop using magic? No, Ida adjusted his glasses, the lenses flashing. You stop trying to be a standard wizard. You need a paradigm shift. And we, he pointed to the stack of books, are going to the library to find it. Part 2, The Potions Incident. Before they could reach the library, however, there was the small matter of potions class. Professor Severus Snape swept into the dungeon classroom like a giant bat, the door slamming shut behind him. The air was cold and smelled of sulfur. Today, Snape drawled, his black eyes boring into the class, we will be brewing the invigoration draft. A simple potion. Yet I expect the majority of you to manage to turn it into a lethal poison. His gaze landed on Izuku. Midoriya. Try not to destroy my classroom today. The budget does not account for your volatility. The Slytherin snickered. Draco Malfoy leaned over to Bakugo. Reckon he'll blow up the cauldron or just himself this time. Bakugo didn't laugh. He was staring at Izuku's back, his expression unreadable. Since the duel, Bakugo had been quiet. Watchful. Izuku swallowed hard and began to chop his scurvy grass. Focus. Gentle. No magic. Just chemistry. The brewing went well for the first hour. The potion was turning the correct shade of turquoise. Izuku felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he could do this. Potions didn't require channeling raw power. Now Snape commanded from the front, add the lovage seeds and stir 3 times clockwise. Gently, Izuku picked up the stirrer. 3 times. Clockwise. Gently, he reached into the cauldron. But as his hand moved, he felt it. The flicker. The hum of one for all deep in his chest, reacting to the magical properties of the potion ingredients. It was like static electricity jumping a gap. His arm twitched. No! Stop! The power surged, just a fraction of a percent, into his fingertips. He stirred. The glass stirring rod didn't just move through the liquid, it created a vortex. The potion swirled so fast it defied gravity, climbing up the walls of the cauldron. The friction and the sudden infusion of raw magical energy turned the liquid from turquoise to a blinding, angry neon red. Midoriya! Snape barked. Too late. Boom. The cauldron didn't explode, but the potion did. A geyser of red foam erupted, hitting the dungeon's ceiling and raining down on the class. It was the invigoration draft, but supercharged. Neville Longbottom, who got a mouthful, suddenly stood up and began to vibrate. I feel alive. I can run a marathon. I can fight a manticore. He started doing jumping jacks at super speed. Seamus Finnegan's eyebrows grew back instantly, and then kept growing until they covered his eyes. Snape, who had shielded himself with a flick of his wand, slowly lowered his arm. He was dripping with red foam. Detention, Snape whispered. The silence was terrifying. Midoriya. Detention until you graduate. Izuku sank into his chair, covering his face. Yes, sir. Part 3, The Hypothesis. The library was the only sanctuary left. Izuku, Hermione, and Ida sat at a secluded table in the back, hidden behind a fortress of books. Uraraka was on lookout duty near the restricted section entrance, in case Pants came prowling. It's confirmed, Hermione said, slamming a book titled Energy Dynamics of the Ancient Warlocks onto the table. You're an internal caster. A what? Izuku asked, nursing his hand, which was still shaking from the potion incident. Internal caster, Hermione explained, flipping pages rapidly. Look here. Before wands were invented by the Romans, wizards didn't project magic outward. They used it to enhance themselves. Berserkers in the Norse lands. Monks in the East. They pulled the magic in, like reinforcing the body? Izuku asked, his eyes widening. He pulled out his notebook. Analysis, internalization, precisely, Ida said, reading over Hermione's shoulder. Modern wands are conductors. They draw magic out of the core and shape it into external effects. Incendio creates fire outside you, but your core is too volatile. When you try to push it out through a conductor, the pressure is too high. So, Izuku tapped his quill against his chin. Instead of pushing the magic out, keep it in, Hermione said. Don't try to cast spells. Try to cast yourself. Izuku stared at the diagram in the book. It showed a wizard glowing with a faint aura, punching through a stone wall. If I keep the magic inside, Izuku muttered. I reinforce my skin, my muscles, my bones. The vessel becomes the weapon. I don't need to push the ocean through the straw. I just become the ocean. Metaphorically speaking, Ida clarified. Please do not turn into liquid. But I can't control it, Izuku said, the excitement fading. It's all or nothing. 100% or 0%. That's because you're clenching, Uraraka said, walking over and sitting down. I watched you in charms. Before you cast, you tense up. You brace for the recoil. You're treating the magic like a gun. She picked up an egg from the lunch basket she'd sneaked in. Imagine this egg is you, Uraraka said. If you put it in the microwave, don't ask, my dad loves Muggle appliances, and turn it on high, what happens? It explodes, Izuku said. Right. Because the heat is uneven. It builds up in the middle until pop. She set the egg down. But if you boil it, the heat is even. It surrounds the whole thing. It cooks all the way through without breaking the shell. Izuku stared at the egg. Even distribution. He had been focusing the power into his arm, or his finger, or his wand tip. He was creating a bottleneck. What if I don't focus it? What if I let it flow everywhere? Let it fill every vein, every capillary, from the tips of my toes to the top of my head? Full, covering, Izuku whispered. A mantle, a cowl, Ida suggested. Like a knight's armor. Full cowl, Izuku said, testing the name. It sounded right. He closed his eyes. He reached for the spark. Usually, he grabbed it and shoved it into his arm. This time, he grabbed it and let it go. Don't push. Flow. He imagined the green lightning not as a bolt, but as water. Filling his legs. His torso. His arms. His neck. 5%. Just 5%. Keep it steady. Don't let it spike. A low hum filled the library corner. Izuku? Hermione whispered. Izuku opened his eyes. He wasn't casting a spell. He wasn't holding his wand, but his skin was glowing. Faint, green lines of energy traced across his face and hands like lightning trapped under the dermis. The air around him rippled with heat. A loose piece of parchment on the table floated up, hovering in the static charge. He didn't feel pain. He didn't feel the bone-crushing pressure. He felt light. Izuku stood up. He felt like he weighed nothing. I think I've got it. He took a step. He miscalculated. He meant to take a normal step. But with his legs reinforced by one for all, that normal step launched him. He shot upward like a rocket, slamming headfirst into the ceiling of the library, 15 feet up. Crack. Gravity took over, and he fell back down, crashing onto the table, sending books flying. Ow, Izuku groaned, rubbing his head. Madame Pants, the librarian, appeared from the shadows like a wraith, her eyes burning with fury. Out! She screeched. All of you! Out! They scrambled out of the library, laughing hysterically. Izuku had a goose egg on his head, but for the first time in months, his arm wasn't broken. Part 4. The Room of Requirement. The discovery was one thing. Mastering it was another. 3 days later, Izuku stood in the Room of Requirement. He had paced back and forth 3 times thinking, I need a place to move. The room had obliged. It had transformed into a massive, cavernous gymnasium filled with stone pillars, moving platforms, and floating targets. It looked like a cross between a Muggle obstacle course and the interior of a clock tower. All right, Izuku breathed, wearing his gym uniform. Let's try this again. He closed his eyes. One for all, full cowl. 5%. The green lightning crackled around him. The power settled into his muscles, humming like a high-tension wire. Maintain the flow, he muttered. Don't let it pull. He took a step. This time, he was ready. He dashed forward. The speed was intoxicating. He wasn't running, he was blurring. He crossed the room in a heartbeat, banking off a stone pillar. Wall jump! He kicked off the stone, the impact spiderwebbing the rock, and launched himself toward a high platform. He landed, rolled, and sprang up again. It was working. He didn't need a wand to fly. He was flying. Impressive, a voice rasped. Izuku skidded to a halt, the green lightning fading. Professor Yagi stood by the door, leaning on a cane. Professor, I have been watching your progress, Yagi said, limping into the room. Miss Granger came to me. She told me of your theory regarding internalization. I hope that's okay, Izuku said. I know I'm supposed to be learning standard magic. Standard magic is for standard wizards, Yagi said, looking around the obstacle course. And you, my boy, are anything but standard. Show me. Show you? Attack me? Izuku blinked. Sir, you're retired. You're injured, Yagi chuckled. It was a dry, dusty sound. I may be a skeleton, Izuku, but I was the #1 duelist in the world for 30 years. Do not hold back. Use this full cowl. Yagi drew his wand. He didn't raise it. He just held it loosely. Come! Izuku took a breath. Green lightning on. He vanished. He sprinted straight at Yagi, closing the gap in a second. He pulled back his fist for a smash, stopping just short of hitting him, of course. But Yagi wasn't there. Crack! Izuku felt a stinging hex hit his backside. He tumbled forward. Yagi had apparat. No, not apparat. That was impossible within Hogwarts. He had moved. With a simple sidestep and a disillusionment charm so fast Izuku hadn't even seen it. Linear! Yagi shouted from the other side of the room. You move in straight lines. Predictable. A dark wizard will just aim where you are going to be. Izuku grit his teeth. Again, he bounced off the walls, zigzagging. Left, right, ceiling, floor. He came at Yagi from above. Better. Yagi flicked his wand. Depulso! A wave of force hit Izuku midair. Izuku didn't have a shield charm. But he had legs. He kicked the air, literally kicking against the magical force, and used the momentum to spin. He landed behind Yagi. Gotcha! He reached out to tag Yagi's robe. Yagi spun, his wand tip glowing. Protego! Izuku's fist hit the shield. Usually, a fist hitting a Protego charm would result in a broken hand, but Izuku's fist was reinforced with magic. Smash! The blue shield shattered like glass. Izuku's fist stopped an inch from Yagi's nose. The wind pressure from the punch blew Yagi's bangs back. Silence filled the room. Yagi looked at the shattered remnants of his shield charm, a charm that had withstood curses from Voldemort's lieutenants. You broke a Protego, Yagi whispered, his eyes wide. With your knuckles. Izuku panted, the green lightning fizzling out. He collapsed to his knees, exhausted. Did I pass? Yagi lowered his wand. A slow, proud smile spread across his face. You didn't just pass, Izuku. You just invented a new school of combat. Wandless reinforcement. Battle mage tactics. Yagi offered a hand to help him up. However, Yagi added, eyeing Izuku's trembling legs. Your control is still sloppy. You are leaking magic like a sieve. If you want to master this, you need finesse. Not just power. Part 5, The Astronomy Tower. Finesse was harder than power. 2 nights later, Izuku was struggling. He could run fast, he could punch hard, but he couldn't do the small things. He couldn't hold a teacup without crushing it. He couldn't turn a page without ripping it. Full cowl was currently an on-off switch, not a dimmer. He was sitting on the edge of the astronomy tower, legs dangling over the abyss, looking at the stars. Mind if I join you? It was Uraraka. She was wearing her pajamas and a thick wool cloak. Hey Uraraka, Izuku scooted over. Couldn't sleep? Neville's toad got loose in the common room again. It's chaos. She sat down, exhaling a cloud of white mist in the cold air. How's the training? It's frustrating, Izuku admitted. I feel like I'm wearing a suit of armor that's too big for me. Every time I move I clank. Maybe you're thinking too much about the armor, Uraraka said, looking at the moon. And not enough about the body inside it. She pulled out her wand. Here. Let me help. She tapped Izuku's shoulder. Wingardium Leviosa. Izuku felt the familiar weightlessness. He floated up a few feet off the stone floor. Whoa! Uraraka? Now, she said, putting her wand away. Move. I can't move, I'm floating. I have no leverage. Exactly, she smiled. If you use full call on the ground, you rely on friction. You push off the stone. But up here? You have nothing to push against but the magic itself. Izuku hovered, bobbing in the wind. Push against the magic. He activated full cowl. Green sparks danced around him. Usually, he pushed the magic into his legs to kick the ground. What if I push the magic out of my legs? Just a tiny burst. Like a jet engine, he focused on the soles of his feet. Poof! A tiny blast of air propelled him forward. He spun out of control, tumbling upside down. Uraraka giggled. Graceful. I'm trying. Izuku laughed. He tried again. Focus. Balance. He extended his arms and legs, using the emission of magic to stabilize himself. It was like swimming in water, but the water was his own power. He floated upright. He turned left. He turned right. I'm doing it, Izuku gasped. I'm maneuvering. See? Uraraka floated herself up to join him. You don't need to smash everything. Sometimes you just need to float. They drifted there for a moment, suspended above the sleeping castle. You know, Uraraka said softly, Bakugo is watching you. Izuku stiffened. I know. He's scared, Deku. Kaken? Scared? He's never been scared of anything. He's scared that you're leaving him behind, she said. He always thought you were behind him. But now, you're on a path he can't follow. You're not playing by the rules of wizardry anymore. Izuku looked at his glowing hands. I'm not trying to beat him, Izuku whispered. I'm just trying to catch up to the person I need to be. Part 6, The Test. The breakthrough came the following Tuesday in the hallway outside the Great Hall. It was chaotic between classes. Students were rushing everywhere. Peeves the poltergeist was cackling near the ceiling, juggling heavy water balloons filled with icy slush. Bombs away, Ickle kitties! Peeves shrieked. He dropped a massive balloon. Not a normal balloon, a magically expanded one, the size of a beach ball, heavy as a boulder. Directly underneath it was a first-year Hufflepuff, staring up in horror. The balloon fell. Students screamed. Wands were drawn, but panic made them slow. Protego wouldn't be fast enough. Izuku was at the other end of the corridor, talking to Ida. He saw the balloon falling. He didn't think. Full cowl. 5%. The world slowed down. Izuku moved. To the other students, it looked like a glitch in reality. One moment, Izuku was standing by the stairs. The next, there was a blur of green lightning and a gust of wind that blew their robes up. Izuku appeared under the falling balloon. He didn't catch it. It was too heavy and would crush the first year if he missed. He spun. Shoot style, roundhouse. He kicked the air violently, creating a localized updraft of pressure. The wind blast hit the balloon from underneath, cushioning its fall and diverting it sideways. The balloon sailed harmlessly into a suit of armor, exploding with a wet splat that drenched the metal knight. Izuku landed in a crouch, steam rising from his skin. The green lightning faded. The corridor was silent. The first year looked at him with wide, worshipping eyes. Whoa, are you okay? Izuku asked, offering a hand. He wasn't panting. His bones weren't broken. That was... Seamus Finnegan stared, his wand half raised. You didn't use a wand. You just kicked the air. Yeah, Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, smiling sheepishly. I'm working on a new technique. From the shadows of the staircase, Katsuki Bakugo watched. He crushed the apple he was holding in his hand. Wandless casting, Bakugo muttered, his voice shaking with a mix of rage and something else. Physical reinforcement. He's making up his own magic. Bakugo turned and stormed off toward the dungeons. Part 7, The Name. That evening, Izuku sat in Yagi's office. So, Yagi said, pouring tea. You saved a student, destroyed a suit of armor, and scared Peeves away. All without breaking a single bone. I think I've finally stabilized it, Izuku said, flexing his hand. The scars were still there, but the pain was gone. If I keep the power flowing constantly, spreading it out, the pressure doesn't build up. I can move. And the name? Yagi asked. One for all, full cowl, Izuku said. It's not perfect. I can only hold 5% right now. Maybe 8% if I push it. But it's enough. Yagi smiled. He reached into his desk and pulled out a long, thin box. Then you are ready for this. He opened the box. Inside lay a new wand. It was dark, almost black, made of ironwood. It looked sturdy. Thick. Ironwood, Yagi said. Dragon heartstring. But not just any heartstring. It's from a Hungarian horntail. Rigid. Unyielding. Izuku picked it up. It was heavy. It felt like holding a hammer. It will resist your magic, Yagi warned. It will fight you. But that resistance will force you to push harder. It acts as a regulator. With this wand, and your full cowl, Yagi stood up, casting a long shadow. You are no longer a student struggling to light a feather, Izuku. You are a combatant. And just in time, Yagi pointed to the newspaper on his desk. The headline of the Daily Prophet screamed, "Breakout at Azkaban. 10 Death Eaters escape. Ministry blames Sirius Black." The enemy is moving, Yagi said darkly. Shigaraki is gathering his forces. And soon they will come for us. Izuku gripped his new wand. The green energy hummed beneath his skin, controlled, ready. Let them come, Izuku said. Part 1, The Gilded Stage. The atmosphere in Hogwarts had changed. Since the mass breakout from Azkaban, the playful whimsy of the castle had been replaced by a heavy, suffocating tension. The corridors felt darker, the shadows longer. First years traveled in packs, clutching their wands like lifelines. The portraits whispered of the dark mark appearing in the sky over London. To combat the rising fear, Headmaster Niza had authorized the reinstatement of the dueling club. It was Friday evening. The great hall had been cleared of its long dining tables. In their place stood a massive, gilded stage, lit by floating candles that burned with a fierce, blue flame. The entire school was present, packed into the hall, a sea of black robes buzzing with nervous energy. Welcome, Professor Yagi's voice boomed, though he did not use the sonorous charm. He stood at one end of the stage, leaning on his cane, looking frail yet imposing. Beside him stood Professor Snape, looking bored and disdainful, his arms crossed within his black sleeves. In light of recent events, Yagi continued, his skeletal face grim, it has been decided that you must learn to defend yourselves. Not against boggarts. Not against pixies, but against wizards who wish to do you harm. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tonight is not about points, Snape sneered, stepping forward. It is not about glory. It is about survival. If you are slow, you bleed. If you hesitate, you fall. We will begin with a demonstration of offensive capability, Yagi said. He scanned the crowd. Mr. Bakugo. Step forward. The crowd parted instantly. Katsuki Bakugo walked toward the stage. He didn't walk with the nervous shuffle of a student. He walked with the predatory stride of a wolf entering a sheep pen. His Slytherin tie was loose, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He vaulted onto the stage without using the stairs. Who's the target? Bakugo asked, cracking his knuckles. Mr. Monoma from Ravenclaw has volunteered, Snape drawled, gesturing to a smug-looking blond boy who was twirling his wand. Nito Monoma stepped up, bowing theatrically. A pleasure. I've heard you're quite the brute, Bakugo. Let's see if raw power can match Ravenclaw intellect and begin! Snape shouted. Monoma raised his wand. Confringo. There was no hesitation. No build-up. Bakugo's wand slashed through the air like a whip. A ball of fire the size of a carriage wheel erupted from the tip. Monoma didn't even finish his syllable. The blasting curse hit his hastily erected protego shield with the force of a wrecking ball. The blue shield shattered into sparkling dust, and Monoma was launched backward off the stage, flying 20 feet through the air before landing in a heap of Ravenclaw students. Silence. Bakugo stood in the center of the stage, smoke drifting from his wand. He hadn't even broken a sweat. Pathetic, Bakugo spat. He turned to the teachers. Is that it? Send me a real wizard. Send me a 7th year. Mr. Bakugo, Yagi warned, arrogance is a weakness. It's not arrogance if I'm right, Bakugo retorted. He prowled the edge of the stage, his red eyes scanning the crowd. He wasn't looking for 7th years. He was hunting. His gaze locked onto a messy mop of green hair near the back of the Gryffindor cluster. Izuku Midoriya felt the gaze like a physical weight. He instinctively touched the new ironwood wand in his pocket. You, Bakugo said. He didn't shout, but the acoustics of the hall carried his voice perfectly. Deku. The nickname cut through the silence. Harry Potter leaned over to Izuku. He's calling you out, mate. You don't have to go. Snape won't force you. He's right, Hermione whispered, clutching her books. Bakugo is. He's dangerous tonight. He's looking to hurt someone. Izuku looked up at the stage. He saw the sneer on Bakugo's face. He saw the challenge. For 5 years, Izuku had been the boy who hid behind books. The boy who watched from the sidelines. The squib. But he wasn't a squib anymore. He had the sacred flame. I have to go, Izuku whispered. Midoriya, this is illogical. Ida hissed. The statistical probability of injury is 98%. I know, Izuku said. He pushed past Ron and Harry. He walked through the parting crowd. Every step felt heavy, but his heart was beating a rhythm of war drums. I am here. I am here. He climbed the stairs to the stage. Bakugo grinned. It was a terrifying expression. Finally crawled out of your hole, have you? I'm not hiding anymore, Kaken, Izuku said, his voice trembling slightly but his eyes steady. Snape looked between them, sensing the genuine animosity. He looked ready to intervene, but Yagi placed a hand on Snape's arm. Let them, Yagi whispered. They need this. Part 2, The Predator and the Prey. Bakugo and Izuku stood 30 paces apart. The candles flickered overhead. Wands at the ready, Snape commanded. Bakugo raised his wand, dragon heartstring, rigid. Izuku raised his wand, ironwood, heavy, unyielding. On the count of 3, Snape began. 1. 2, Reducto. Bakugo didn't wait for 3. The blue spell beamed across the stage, aiming for Izuku's chest. A reductor curse could turn solid stone into dust. If it hit a human, it broke bones. Izuku didn't cast a shield charm. He knew his protego was still shaky, and against Bakugo's raw output, it would shatter like glass. Full cowl. 5%. The green lightning ignited under his skin. The world slowed down. Izuku saw the blue beam coming. He moved. To the audience, Izuku simply vanished. There was a squeak of rubber soles on wood, and the curse passed harmlessly through the space where his chest had been a millisecond before. Izuku reappeared 5 feet to the right, crouching low, steam rising from his skin. Missed, Izuku breathed. Fast, Bakugo acknowledged, his grin widening. You learn how to run. Cute. Stupefy. Expulso. Incendio. He unleashed a barrage. He didn't fire one spell at a time. He chained them together in a fluid, violent dance. Red, blue, and orange light streaked across the stage. Izuku danced. He didn't return fire. He couldn't. He needed every ounce of concentration to maintain the 5% full cowl without breaking his legs. He ducked under a stunning spell. He jumped over a blasting curse, tucking his knees to his chest, the heat singing his robes. He sidestepped a fire-making spell, feeling the warmth on his cheek. Is he dancing? Neville Longbottom asked from the floor, eyes wide. He's apparating, Draco Malfoy muttered, pale. You can't apparate inside Hogwarts. How is he doing that? It's not apparition, Harry Potter said, his eyes tracking the green blur. It's speed. Pure physical speed enhanced by magic. On the stage, Bakugo was getting annoyed. Stop moving, you damn insect! Bakugo roared. He swept his wand in a wide arc. Ventus Maxima. A gale of wind swept across the stage, intended to knock Izuku off his feet. Izuku saw the wind coming, a distortion in the air. He couldn't dodge wind. It covered the whole stage. Anchor. Izuku slammed his foot down, channeling magic into his soul to grip the wood. He crossed his arms in an X block. The wind hit him. It tore at his robes, blowing his hair back, pushing him. His shoes groaned against the floorboards, carving deep grooves into the wood as he slid backward. He stopped at the very edge of the stage, his heels hanging over the drop. Caught you, Bakugo whispered. Bakugo pointed his wand. He wasn't aiming at Izuku. He was aiming at the floor in front of Izuku. Bombarda! The explosion ripped the floorboards apart. Wood splinters turned into shrapnel. Izuku had no choice. He jumped. He launched himself high into the air, soaring 20 feet above the stage toward the rafters. Bad move, Deku! Bakugo yelled, tilting his head back. You can't dodge in the air. Bakugo raised his wand. The tip glowed with a blinding, white light. He was charging a spell. A finisher, howitzer. Bakugo screamed, channeling his magic. Izuku was falling. Gravity was pulling him down. He was a sitting duck. Think. Think. I can't fly. I can't dodge. He looked at the floating candles near him. Leverage. Izuku twisted his body in midair. He kicked off a floating candle, sending the wax sputtering, and changed his trajectory. It wasn't much, just a few inches. Impact. Bakugo unleashed a massive explosion of concussive force. It missed Izuku by an inch. The heat scorched his robe, but the main force passed him. Izuku landed in a roll, coming up in the center of the stage. He was panting. His legs were shaking. 5% was exhausting. Bakugo lowered his wand, his chest heaving. He looked furious. Stop running and fight me. Part 3, The Smokescreen Strategy. Izuku stood up. He wiped soot from his cheek. I can't beat him at range, Izuku muttered to himself. His output is higher. His variety is better. If I stay back, he'll eventually tag me. He looked at his ironwood wand. It hummed in his hand, hungry. I have to get close. Okay, Kaken, Izuku yelled. You want to fight? Here, Izuku charged. He didn't zigzag this time. He ran straight at Bakugo. A green streak of lightning. Suicide. Ron Weasley gasped. Bakugo's eyes widened in delight. Die. He fired a reducto straight at Izuku's face. Izuku didn't dodge. He whipped his wand. Depulso. Izuku cast the banishing charm on the floor in front of him. The blast of force acted like a retro rocket. It stopped his forward momentum instantly. Bakugo's curse flew through the space Izuku would have occupied. Izuku kicked off the floor again, accelerating instantly. Stop and go. A jerky, unpredictable rhythm. Bakugo fired again. Stupefy. Izuku cast the pulso to his left, blasting the air to shove his own body to the right. He was using the spell like a thruster. He was closing the gap. 30 paces. 20. 10. Bakugo realized what was happening. Get away! Bakugo slammed his wand into the stage. Obscuro. A cloud of thick, black smoke erupted from his wand, covering the entire stage. It was a smoke screen. Bakugo was blinding them both. I don't need to see you to kill you! Bakugo's voice echoed from everywhere inside the smoke. I can smell the ozone on you, Deku. I can hear your heartbeat. Izuku skidded to a halt inside the black cloud. He couldn't see his hand in front of his face. Silence. He held his breath. He quieted the lightning. Where is he? Swish. To his left. Izuku ducked. A jet of purple light cut through the smoke where his head had been. Swish. From behind. Izuku rolled forward. An explosion rocked the floor behind him. Bakugo was moving too. He was using the smoke to hide his casting. He's hurting me, Izuku realized. He's pushing me toward the edge. Izuku closed his eyes. He couldn't trust his vision. He had to trust his gut. He had to trust the danger sense that Yagi said all great auras possessed. The air pressure changed. Above, Izuku looked up blindly. Bakugo was coming down from a jump, wand aimed directly at Izuku's skull. Blasting curse. There was no time to dodge. No time to run. Izuku raised his wand. I can't block it. I have to overpower it. But 5% wouldn't be enough to stop a direct hit from Bakugo. I have to go higher. Yagi said not to. He said my arm would explode. If I don't do this, I lose. If I lose, I'm just a Deku forever. Izuku gripped his wand. He isolated the magic. He pulled it away from his legs, his body, and funneled it all into his right arm. Into his index finger, one for all. 100%. The pain was immediate. His veins bulged, glowing a violent, angry red beneath the skin. The ironwood wand groaned, the wood heating up instantly. Bakugo's spell left his wand. A massive ball of orange destruction. Izuku thrust his wand upward to meet it. He didn't use a complex curse. He used the simplest force spell in the book. Depulso, Part 4, The Delaware Smash. It wasn't a charm. It was a cannon blast. The raw magical energy of One for All, channeled through a single point, amplified the banishing charm 1,000 times over. The air itself cracked. A sonic boom exploded in the great hall. Izuku's spell met Bakugo's curse in midair, 3 feet above Izuku's head. There was no contest. Bakugo's fireball didn't just fizzle, it was reversed. The sheer pressure of Izuku's spell caught the explosion and pushed it back up, along with a column of compressed air that hit Bakugo like a freight train. Wah! Bakugo's eyes went white. The blast launched Bakugo upward. He flew through the smoke, clearing it instantly with the updraft. He kept going. 20 feet. 30 feet. He smashed through the floating candles. The shockwave hit the audience. Students were knocked off their feet. Snape's robes whipped around him violently. The stained glass windows of the great hall rattled in their frames. Crack! The sound of Izuku's finger breaking was lost in the boom, but he felt it. His index finger turned purple instantly, the bones splintering under the magical backlash. His wand flew from his numb hand, clattering away. Bakugo hit the apex of his flight, suspended for a second near the enchanted ceiling, looking down in horror at the boy who had just swatted him like a fly. Then, gravity reclaimed him. Bakugo fell. Professor Yagi moved. In a blur of movement that belied his frailty, he cast Arresto momentum. Bakugo slowed in midair, drifting gently down to land on his back on the splintered stage. He stared up at the ceiling, winded, stunned, his wand rolling out of his hand. Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. The smoke cleared completely. Izuku stood in the center of the wreckage. He was clutching his right hand to his chest. He was trembling. His face was pale, beads of sweat dripping down his nose. He looked at Bakugo. Izuku panted, his voice raspy. I'm not a pebble. Bakugo lay there. He blinked. He sat up slowly, looking at his own hands, then at Izuku. For the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo didn't have an insult ready. He looked at the hole in the clouds of the enchanted ceiling where Izuku's blast had parted the magical weather. Winner, Snape's voice cut through the quiet, though he sounded shaken. Midoriya. Part 5, The Shift. The roar that erupted from Gryffindor House was deafening. He did it! Ron screamed, jumping on the bench. Did you see that? He blasted him into orbit. Harry and Hermione rushed the stage. Izuku! Hermione cried, looking at his hand. Your finger. It's okay. Izuku winced, adrenaline fading, pain rushing in. Just one finger. Better than the whole arm. That was bloody brilliant! Fred Weasley yelled, clapping him on the back. What spell was that? Depulso? That wasn't Depulso, that was a bloody siege cannon. As they swarmed him, Izuku looked through the crowd. He saw the Slytherins. They weren't sneering anymore. Draco Malfoy looked genuinely unnerved. They were looking at him with fear, and at the edge of the stage, Bakugo stood up. He brushed off his robes. He picked up his wand. He walked over to Izuku. The Gryffindors went quiet, stepping back, expecting a fight. Bakugo stopped 2 feet from Izuku. He looked at the broken finger. He looked at Izuku's eyes. You've been holding out on me, Bakugo whispered. His voice was low, dangerous, but controlled. I didn't have it before, Izuku said honestly. It's new. You broke your finger to do that, Bakugo noted. Your body can't handle it. You're a glass cannon. Maybe, Izuku said, standing straighter. But I won. Bakugo stared at him for a long, tense moment. Then he scoffed. A sharp, barking sound. You won 1 round, Deku. Don't let it go to your big head. Next time. I won't aim for the floor. Bakugo turned and shoved his way through the crowd, storming out of the great hall. But as he left, Izuku saw his hands. They were shaking. Not from fear, but from rage. From the realization that the hierarchy had shattered. Midoriya, Professor Yagi called out, beckoning him. Hospital wing. Now, Part 6, The Shadow Watcher. Later that night, the hospital wing was quiet. Izuku lay in bed, his finger splintered and wrapped in a foul-smelling poultice. Bone is knit, Madame Pomfrey had grumbled. But the magical pathways in that digit are fried. It will be stiff when it rains. Izuku stared at his hand in the moonlight. You were reckless, a voice said from the shadows. Izuku turned. Shoto Todoroki stood at the foot of his bed. The dual-haired Slytherin usually ignored everyone, but tonight he was here. Todoroki? I saw the duel, Todoroki said. His voice was flat, monotone. You have immense power. But it hurts you. I'm learning to control it, Izuku said. My father, Todoroki said suddenly, looking out the window, Endeavor. He seeks power above all else. He created me to be the perfect hybrid of ice and fire. To surpass all might. to surpass everyone. Izuku listened, confused. Why are you telling me this? Todoroki turned his mismatched eyes on Izuku. Because you remind me of him. Not my father, but All Might. That raw, self-sacrificial power. Todoroki stepped closer. Bakugo uses his magic to destroy. You used yours to push away. But you broke yourself to do it. I had to, Izuku said. To win. Is winning worth your body? Todoroki asked. He looked at his own left hand, the fire side, with disgust. I refuse to use my fire. I will win the Triwizard Tournament, or whatever replacement they have planned, using only my ice. I will reject my father's power, but... Izuku sat up. It's your magic, isn't it? Not his. Todoroki froze. He looked at Izuku as if he had spoken in a foreign language. Go to sleep, Midoriya, Todoroki said coldly. You'll need your strength. The dark arts teacher. Yagi, he's hiding something. And whatever is coming, your broken fingers won't be enough to stop it. Todoroki left the room, his cloak sweeping behind him like a shroud. Izuku lay back down. He looked at his wand on the nightstand. He had won the duel. He had earned the respect of his peers. But the fear in Todoroki's voice, the warning from Yagi, the escape from Azkaban, the duel with Bakugo was just a sparring match. The real war hadn't even started. Part 7, The Villain's Gaze. Miles away, in a dilapidated manor house that smelled of mold and dark magic, a man sat watching a crystal ball. The image in the ball was fuzzy, but it showed the Great Hall of Hogwarts. It showed the green lightning. It showed the blast that sent a student flying. Tamura Shigaraki scratched his neck, his skin dry and flaking. He wore a hand clasping his face, a grotesque mask. Sensei, Shigaraki rasped. Did you see that? From the shadows of the room, a voice answered. It was a smooth, deep voice, connected to a life support system that hissed rhythmically. All for one. I saw it, Tamura. The color. The intensity. That is not standard magic. It's him, isn't it? Shigaraki asked, his red eyes narrowing. All Might passed it on. It appears so, All for One mused. He found a successor. A boy. Reckless. Powerful. Unrefined. Shigaraki stood up, decay spreading from his fingertips, turning the wooden table to dust. I hate him, Shigaraki hissed. I hate the Society of Peace. I hate All Might. And now, I hate this brat. Patience, Tamura, the voice soothed. Let the boy grow ripe. Let him think he is safe in his castle. We need a plan, Shigaraki said. The Dementors have joined us. The giants are listening. What next? The sports festival is approaching, All for One said. Hogwarts will lower its wards for the guests. That will be our stage. And the boy? Kill him, All for One said simply. Kill the symbol before it has a chance to shine. Shigaraki smiled beneath the hand mask. Game on.